Hey everyone, it's me Luis Estrela from Nintendo Everything, and today I'm super happy because I'm here again to talk about Xenoblade. As probably most of you already know, recently we had a special Nintendo Direct exclusive for Xenoblade Chronicles 3, which was sad for some people, but for people like us who are Xenoblade fans was fantastic. And in my opinion, the Direct was actually fantastic. So I think we had a lot of new information, a lot of stuff that we can discuss, that we can talk about. And I decided to once again, like I did with my previous Xenoblade discussion, to invite my friend Nicholas, who is a news editor on the site. You probably already saw his name if you follow Nintendo Everything. And we are going to talk about most of what was shown, what was announced here. Now, we probably will avoid talk about spoilers for Xenoblade 1 and 2. And of course we cannot spoiler Xenoblade 3 yet, but be aware that we are going to make some speculation. So maybe we're going to be right on some stuff and well, then it's of course a spoiler. But yeah, all that we know is probably all that you watching already know. And if we really feel the need to talk about a spoiler for Xenoblade 1 or Xenoblade 2, we'll try to give an alert before, so you can actually jump that part if you never finish one of those games. But truly, if you never finished Xenoblade 1 or 2 and you are listening to this, go play those games immediately to have the best experience possible with Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Now, Nicholas, I want to ask you a question before we start. We are going to talk in the same chronology of the Direct, so basically story, exploration, and finally combat. And before we enter in story, I want to ask you which one of the 6 characters is your favorite. You can choose one from Agnes and one from Kieves. So choose one from each team.
Oh no. Why would you put this on me?
Already putting you on the spot here.
Oh no. Well, it's really hard to say. I mean, from what we've seen of all the characters, I really like all of them.
Same.
I think probably from Agnes, it's a little basic, but I'm very interested in what Noah has to offer. I just want to see what he does in terms of being the main protagonist, how Monolith decides to develop him, and, kind of see what his journey throughout the game will be. If I had to pick from... Noah from Kevis. If I had to pick from Agnes, I really like I really like Mio and Senna a lot, but I think I would actually have to pick Taion because I expected him to be a pretty stereotypical, like, cool, cold, calculating type, but from what we've seen in the trailer, especially this one, he actually has some more emotional moments where he talks about being afraid of not living to see the next day, of losing people that he loves and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I think that actually makes him really interesting because it's a pretty big contrast with how, like, his stereotype would appear to be. So I really want to see what more they do with him, actually.
Yeah, and I think in the specific case of Taion, it's really interesting how he feels different in the design departments. His look, his outfits, I don't think he's like that classic Xenoblade look from the classic style that Masataka Saito used general in Xenoblade 2 and now on 3. So I think he looks kind of different, and his attacks with all that paper stuff, it's really different from what we are used to see on Xenoblade. So I like him too. Well, okay, I think the both that you choose are really good ones. I think Noah, so far, I'm really interested in him, but I think I didn't get exactly his personality just yet. I don't think he'll be as... how can I say, as extrovert as Rex. So he seems to be a little more close to Shulk. But even so, I think he's a little more mature. I think even though they showed a lot, it seems that those small character moments are when we are going to actually understand those characters and how they feel. But so far, I think from Kieves, I'd probably choose Uni, because at a first glance, I thought she was going to be a little like Nia, like more or less a tsundere, but I think she's more like a little, how can I say? she's a little outgoing. She's very carefree. I think she's kind of not exactly. I think she'll not be like that person who the protagonist will ignore and not have a romance with. I think she actually has her own personality,
Yeah.
and she doesn't will be behind Noah all the time like Melia, and not exactly Nia, but in that specific chapter how Nia was actually developed. So I'm really interested in her, and I also like her design. I like that she's a high Entia. And from the other side, on Agnes, I think it would have to be Mio, just because I love Nia. I think Nia is one of my favorite characters from all Xenoblades, and at the time that I saw Mio on the first trailer, it was the first indication that it was Xenoblade. So she was like the first, because her design, she's a Gormoti, of course, or I mean, she's a blade, but she has that Gormoti look, so it was obvious that it would be a Xenoblade game. So I really like, and so far I really like her personality. I think she'll have a huge focus on the story, so I'm interested in seeing how they'll develop her. Now, talking about the direct itself, it started really weird, like in a strange way, with that scene in the theater and full of those strange characters, those consuls, and they are kind of discussing some topics in a really vague way, so it's kind of hard to understand what they're saying. And I think I already mentioned this to you, but I think this is very classic anime trope, very similar to what Evangelion and other in the Xeno story. Xenogears did something really similar, where there's this whole secret society who are the actual bad guys on the story. And I think also, because this is one of the most vague parts in the trailer, it's also where people are speculating a lot, like trying to understand what exactly they are, what does that infinite symbol actually means that we see on them, and their whole armor, we don't know if they are human, if they were just a collective mind, what is going on. So I like that. I like that mystery. It's really interesting to make me hopeful for how the game will actually end and how many mysteries will be revealed by the end. I really like that as a story starting point.
Yeah, the direct did a really good job of, I mean, kind of like what the second trailer did, where it's dropping these little story hints, but it's not giving you quite enough to piece it together. So there's enough intrigue from it that you're still interested without it outright spoiling what's going to happen. That's definitely the case with the consoles. I mean, there's so many questions to be asked about them. Like the one console that kind of looks like Noah, the one that stands out that has like this gray cracked skin with these weird flame horns, like purple flame horns. It's who even, like you said, who even are they? What's their goal? Why are they trying to have Kevis and Agnes kind of be at this conflict and absorbing all this energy? Like, there's so much here.
Yeah, because we have all the confirmation from the lore that those characters have a 10-year lifespan, which was leaked earlier, but now we have confirmation of that. And it gives the story a very unique vibe. We never saw that concept in a Xenoblade game, so it is quite different. And it kind of makes us wonder how they are actually manipulating this, what they are actually why they need the life of these people, why there's this ceremony, and why Melia and Nia are all in this, probably not. So it is, there's a lot of questions, even though we saw a lot. And I like that. I think it's the whole concept of a 10-year lifespan. I think it's like a good recipe to make a story where the stakes are higher than ever, because in the trailer there's already a confirmation that Mio has like 3 months, and I think this will be one of the biggest stakes in the whole story, because they probably, if there's a way out of this cycle, they are probably searching for this. And we saw with the Van Damme character that he is kind of guiding them from trying to get them out of this. So I think this is kind of the starting point of the story. I don't know how you actually develop, but I think we'll start on this with the characters meeting up. We saw that scene where they meet for the first time and they are fighting and all of that stuff. And I think possibly this game will already start amazing. A lot of people complain about how Xenoblade 2 starts very slow, and I think this time they'll try to start. I think the first scene of the game is that war. Like there's the camera panning from the ground and showing all those soldiers. I think this is the first scene of the game, which is very similar to the first scene of the first Xenoblade 1.
Yeah. It has a huge Sword Valley vibe.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think it is really interesting and brings a lot of different ideas to the story. Kind of like Takahashi brought with the blades on Xenoblade 2. It's like a totally crazy and different concept, but he can explore all the intricacies of the relationships and the philosophy behind all that. We know that one of the main themes of the game will be life, how you actually use your life, how you make the most of the time you have.
Yeah, and we already saw some pretty interesting ideas with it, like the fact that part of the reason why the war is even happening is because killing an enemy soldier basically has your Pharaonis, the giant mech, absorb their life force and refill the flame clock. And apparently, it was said in a tweet, I don't think it was explicitly said in the direct, that if something happens to a Pharaonis' flame clock, if it gets completely depleted, everyone belonging to that colony dies. So there's this very real incentive, hey, we need to be killing this other group of people or else we're going to die. So there's already, in terms of something like the value of life, there's already like that kind of intrinsic value where obviously your life is important, but life is a resource itself, because taking an enemy's life extends your own.
Literally, yeah.
Yeah, it's already some very harsh concepts. And then you have that mixed with whatever Vandam is doing, where despite this 10-year lifespan, Vandam is the only character that we've seen so far that is much visibly older, which implies that somehow he's found a way to kind of break this whole term cycle. And I think it can be assumed that wherever their base is in Sword March, they probably have a group of other people there that have also found a way to live past this 10-term cycle, which will be interesting. It'll also be interesting to see how our characters sort of react to that, if they find a way that they can also extend their life, or if it's this sort of conflict of like, why do they get to extend their life but we do not? I don't know. There's some interesting stuff there.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of the mysteries that will be explored during the games, we can already see the seeds here. And of course, it's really hard to try to imagine how exactly the game will pan out, but we can see that there's a lot of stuff to explore here. There's a lot of themes. And I think in general, I'm getting a really similar vibe to the first Xenoblade, more than 2, when we talk about the story department, right? Even the stuff with the colonies and the general idea of this war. By the end of the trailer, we saw Noah saying something about the freedom to choose, which is really similar to all that idea of choosing your own future in the first Xenoblade. So I think some topics are kind of returning here, which is cool because they are really interesting to watch, to see how they develop that. So,
the return of Fate as a primary theme is definitely a big callback. Like everything with the passage of Fate, all the consoles talking about Fate's flow, even just like a little bit more widely, the fact that the consoles are absorbing the life energy and maybe the ether of people is similar to what a certain villain in Xenoblade 1 was doing. The fact that we have Noah and then we have another character that seems like Noah is evil, presumably, is obviously a reference to something in Xenogears, but it's also sort of similar to what happens with a certain character in Xenoblade 1. There's some stuff there. It's interesting how, because Takahashi does kind of tend to do this. It's not a bad thing, but he does kind of tend to have these established themes that he really likes and sort of, retool them, like put them back into his games, but just kind of slightly modified so they have a bit of a different feel to them.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's one of the things that I really like because the Xenoblade games technically are not super connected in a continuous way. Like we always have a different world, we always have a different characters, different main characters, so there's not this obvious continuation that that we had on Xenosaga, for example, that Takahashi did. Xenosaga maintained the same characters. There's always Cosmos, Shion in each new game. And but here in Xenoblade, there's not this continuity is so obvious, but there's these themes that always return, and they kind of make the whole trilogy feels more connected in a certain way. Even though for those who already finished, there are some other connections, but I think a connection more in the sense of making this making this whole trilogy as a series, you know. So we have these topics that are always returning, those ideas, those. But and at the same time, he always managed to find a different way to explore these topics. Nah? So I like it very much. And not only that, but it gives kind of we can see the author in that game. We can see that there's one person behind it actually thinking this through and working with this team to make this cohesive and kind of rewarding the player that plays not only one but all the games in the series. I really like it. So far, the level of cohesion between the Xeno games, even though they are really different, is way bigger than something like Final Fantasy. Because some Final Fantasy games, they feel completely different from one another. Even if some minor characters return or something like that, I feel like the way that he's doing it really works. It's really fun. He always brings new stuff. Like this whole 10-year lifespan, I think it's because in the last game we had the blades, and the blades were basically immortal. And now it seems like the concept is completely the opposite. People live only 10 years, so it will be really interesting to see how it will actually explore that inside the game. Another stuff in the trailer, I don't know if we should talk about that. I think we can talk about that here in the story, but later we can talk more in combat. But something that I found really interesting was the heroes, because we saw some new characters here. And I have a question for you about it. Do you think the heroes will actually be super into the story, or they will be like the blades on Xenoblade 2, where each one of the hero has one or two side quests, and it is not exactly directly related to the main story? Because we saw a lot of characters, so it's like, will all of these characters be important, or maybe each character has an arc in the story, maybe something like that?
I think it'll be something similar to that. Maybe not with all the characters. I imagine some of the heroes might be tied to fully optional side quests, but we've already seen several of them are pretty important to the story. Like Riku and Manana showing up pretty much everywhere. We see that Kamaravi is probably going to be a hero based on the silhouettes, and he's a major character. There's a scene in the trailer where another hero, Xeon, is attacking one of the consoles, so that's pretty clearly going to be a main story segment, and he's involved. So I imagine that at least a good portion of the heroes are going to be tied to the story, and you're going to unlock them naturally as you kind of travel through the game.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, the Noppans, we know that they will be in the party all the time because Manana is the cookie, is the cooker for it, and I think Rico is kind of mechanic, so he probably has a
works
gameplay
on
function.
the gem crafting.
Yeah, exactly. So I think they have kind of gameplay purpose. They will always be in the team and probably in the main cutscenes also. From what we saw so far, they are almost always there. And
although, yeah, it would be kind of funny if I think there's going to be 23 total characters, it looks like.
Oh god.
So between like the 6 main party members and what looked like 17 heroes. So it would be very funny if by the end of the game you just walk up to the final boss and there's like your entire party of 23 characters all kind of just stepping up to this guy ready to beat him down.
This would be awesome. But in relation to that, I think it will probably be a little bit similar to Xenoblade X. In the sense that Xenoblade X, you kind of had all those characters that you could recruit at any time, and they could be part of your party, and you could know more about their story during those affinity quests that Xenoblade X had. So I think a lot of the characters will be like, you can recruit them, which means that they are in your team, but it doesn't mean that all the others are also in your team at the same time, like for story purposes. So I think it is a great way to bring the variety, because at the end of the day, it's something to bring more variety to the gameplay aspect of the game. We saw how many classes the game have and how complex all that stuff will be. So yeah, I think it works pretty well. Now, something about the story that we didn't mention yet is the Ouroboros, which is when two characters, we know that they can fuse. And this is something really interesting to because similar to Blades, it's another way to bring two characters' relationship to a different level, doing different stuff. And it's a dumb question, but do you think all the characters that form an Ouroboros will actually be a couple in the game? Or do you think that they will not try to go through that route?
I mean, I think they're probably going to do that for at least one of them, probably Noah and Mio, just because there has been that kind of romance theme in Xenoblade 1, 2, and Xenoblade 1 and 2. I would be surprised if they didn't follow that in some way in 3, especially because we've seen several scenes of Noah and Mio in particular kind of interacting, because they also have that sort of connection of both being Offseers and whatnot. Whether they're all going to be couples, I sort of hope not, because I do feel that would be a little cliche.
Yeah, I agree.
But at the same time, I could definitely see that happening.
Yeah, because the weird thing is that all the Ouroboros, they are like a boy and a girl. So I was wondering, are they trying to make those like the obvious couples? But I don't know. I think it would be kind of cliche and it would be kind of the easy way out. So I don't, because I want all the characters to have relationships between each other, not only the two that make Ouroboros. And I'm pretty sure they're going to make that, because with all the hearts and stuff, we know that Xenoblade can develop those characters really well and make some strange pairings, characters that you never expect to have a great conversation, like for example Dumban and Riki. And when you less expect, the game gives you those great moments between characters that you wouldn't expect. So yeah, I think the Ouroboros would be nice to develop those couples, those two characters, but I hope they try to go beyond that and explore some other ideas. I think from a mechanical standpoint, I think it would be really complicated, but I would like to see other pairings beyond the ones that were defined in the game. But since they announced that you can change who's in the control of the Ouroboros and you get a different form, I found it to be super interesting. And now, I mean, at the end of the day, we'll get 6 Ouroboros forms, right?
Right. Yep.
So it is really cool. I think it gives you a lot of options.
Yeah. Speaking on the couple thing, honestly, as I would be okay with all of them being couples as long as that means that we don't get a love triangle in the game. I think then I could accept it.
Great point, great point.
But yeah, speaking to the Ouroboros thing, they did specifically mention that these would be the pairs that could form in Ouroboros. So I do think these are going to be the only 6 forms we have, unless there's something that happens near the end of the game that is like, hey, you've unlocked the secret super duper Ouroboros that's like all 6 combined or whatever.
I was wondering that.
I could definitely see. But it's also interesting to see the contrast that we have between the Ouroboros forms and then we have the consoles that have these Mobius forms. And they're very similar. We even see that the Mobius forms are made up of 2 different consoles. But they're very clearly different. All of the Mobius forms are way more monstrous. And it's kind of a question of like, why are they such similar abilities, but they are still so different?
Yeah, it gives the impression that it is kind of the same thing, but from a different source. Like it works in a different way. I'm curious because a lot of the time there's these lines about Melia talking about Ouroboros and Ouroboros has to be exterminated. And do you think Nia and Melia will, at least from the beginning, act like an antagonist in this game? And if they are acting with their own minds, or have they been brainwashed? It's really hard to know because who knows how many years have passed. So it's hard to imagine how they got to this point.
I'm going to guess that based on everything we see about the consoles seemingly manipulating the war, that they're probably brainwashed, because it feels like a very odd attitude for them to have otherwise. And since we also see that people sort of brainwashed by the consoles have that one red eye that could be the reason for Melia and Nia wearing a mask, is to sort of hide that. But you're right, the whole thing about the Ouroboros destroying the world it's interesting because obviously they're being manipulated in some way, like either by the consoles or whatnot, so they want the Ouroboros gone. But I wonder if there's anything deeper to that. Maybe not that, Ouroboros is actually evil or whatever, but maybe there's something in that the Ouroboros has a natural ability to destroy the current world order. Like, somehow the Ouroboros has the potential to break this kind of 10-term cycle, break what the consoles are doing in terms of, like, cloning these people and gathering energy. And maybe that's kind of the subtext behind the whole Ouroboros will bring ruin to the world part.
True, it makes sense because from that scene that we saw, it seems that the one who actually presents the Ouroboros to Dan is Vanden, and knowing that he managed to break the cycle or something like that, it is probably related to the knowledge that he knows about that, and maybe it is a way to kind of destroy the status quo in that world, how things are actually happening. And that actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if the Mobius is kind of just a corrupted form of the Ouroboros. I have a theory. I don't believe that it's necessarily accurate, but it's just something interesting that I thought of, that the way that the ether is being kind of siphoned from people reminds me, like I mentioned earlier, of something from Xenoblade 1. And I'm wondering if maybe what's happening is that they're kind of breaking this natural cycle of life on Ionios by kind of removing the ether from it. And that the Ouroboros is sort of like a natural ability of the planet, like a spirit of the planet sort of deal, that is trying to oppose them and is providing these abilities to our party members so that they can sort of restore the natural cycle again. And so Mobius is basically using that energy of the planet, but corrupting it so that they can use it themselves. That's a bit of a stretch, but I do think it's interesting. It also parallels some aspects of Final Fantasy VII, which has recently been in my brain because of all the announcements about that. So
yeah. No, I don't know if you are 100% correct, but I think you are on the right path. It's probably something like this. That the whole Mobius and versus the Ouroboros is probably something maybe natural or greater, a power that they can use to actually change things or make some form of change by the way that they talk about all that stuff.
Yeah. We do see, I think, at the start of the trailer before Mr. Wildride, who we now know is called D, starts talking to the other consoles. His Ouroboros form is sort of, his Mobius form is sort of glowing reddish, which I saw someone point out is kind of like it's overheating, which is what the Ouroboros forms do in combat. So it's possible that that's another connection. I do wonder what exactly is going on with D, because he shows up multiple times in the trailer, and he kind of seems like this sort of Metal Face-esque antagonist where he shows up multiple times.
I wonder if exactly that.
Yeah. I wonder if there's going to be anything deeper to him, or to any of the consoles really, because we see one of them looks a lot like Noah. His name is even N, which is like pretty big hint that there's something going on. But I wonder if any of the other consoles are going to have that sort of connection as well. If they're going to have like anything special, maybe they're clones of like characters we know. Because there is another theory with the whole infinity symbolism and whatnot, that everything happening in Xenoblade 3 is some kind of loop, either a time loop or an action loop where everything's repeating. Yeah. And the heroes are trying to break that, and maybe that's why N is a form of Noah from a previous loop. There's all this stuff going on. And maybe it could maybe some of the consoles could end up being other characters, but from previous loops and stuff. There's a lot. I do also wonder if the ultimate bad guy or whatever is going to be the two main console bad guys that we see are the weird gray guy and N. And I wonder if they're going to have a Mobius form together. That's going to be like either the ultimate bad guy or like what looks to be the ultimate bad guy at the start.
Probably something like that, or something crazy appear at the end of the game and reveals itself as the real
Suddenly,
the real god or something like that.
Yeah. Klaus shows up and is like, "Hi."
It's really usually at least when I saw that many villains and all of them talking, my first impression was that maybe you would meet each one of them in each of the chapters. You know, you would progress in the game and you would fight. And it is kind of a cliche, but if they can put out in a cool way with good dialogue and all that stuff, it could be fun.
Yeah,
But
like
because
a
I
fun
don't think
villain of
you'll
the week
fight
stuff.
all of them at the same time. Yeah. And even the main bad guy, I'm pretty sure that by the end of the game, we'll probably understand his reasons and be kind of sad because he's dying. So it's always like that with Xenoblade.
Yeah, yeah, I do. We do see, I think, three different Mobius forms in the game. Well, just in the trailer between Wild Ride and I think there's two others. Like there's a big red one, and then there's another sort of like purplish white one. So I wonder if we're going to get 6 total Mobius enemies, or maybe each one can also switch into its alternate form, possibly. I do think we're going to have more. Like, I do think in some way they're going to end up becoming normal enemies, because of the one thing from the second trailer where we see that I think it's Uni-Zero form has an art with a Mobius up damage effect, which sort of implies that they're a more common enemy type, at least at some point in the game, but we'll
it's
just have
smaller,
to wait
maybe.
and see.
Yeah. At the same time, I think there's also other Ouroboros beyond the ones from our team. We probably meet some, I don't know, maybe with main characters or just NPCs. Yeah. From a general point of view, the game looks amazing. The direction is at the level of Xenoblade Chronicles 2, I think a little bit better in the animations and all of that, but Xenoblade 2 was already amazing. Probably the one responsible for the direction and the script is the same person, and all the action scenes look amazing. The motion capture, I don't even know how they motion capture a character jumping to the air and using a sword. It's really interesting how real the movements feels. I really like the style of Xenoblade.
I was just gonna say I really love how Mio's ears have like their own physics and flop around.
Yeah, it's so good.
It's like a little thing, but I really like it.
I think that was the moment that I said, okay, this is better than 2. They really are upping the game here.
Yeah, and you even pointed out to me that the lip syncing is changed for the English dub. So
yeah, I'll try to put in this video the comparison. I think it is in the dialogue that Mio is talking to Senna about the Ouroboros and all that stuff, but you can see that in the Japanese version, the way that she opened her mouth in a less pronounced way because she's speaking another word and all of that. So now I don't know if this will apply to the action big scenes, because I wonder if, because I think what they are doing here is kind of a AI that can detect the words and can make the voice move in a certain way. So this can be easily used on those dialogue scenes with not so much movements that we are used to see, those a little more robotic scenes. But I don't know if it will be that easy to apply on the big scenes that have all that rhythm and have all that the music has to be synchronized with the action. So I don't know if it will be that easy, but even so, those big scenes were already great on 2, so I don't think those are the ones that really needed that much more in the lip sync departments, more in the actual quality of the voiceover.
Yeah,
and
the actual
in
voice
that
directing.
note, in that note, I think the direction, at least for now, sounds way better. On this one, I love all the voices. I think they managed to keep the charm of the British voices from Xenoblade 2, but you are getting the emotional moments, the screens. There's a moment that Mio has a super high screen, and we can see that the actors are really giving all that they got on this. So
from what we've seen so far, I really like Lance's voice actor. I think he's done a really good job with all of his voices. I think Mio's done a great job. I think Senna's had some really good lines as well. Taion, we haven't really heard scream, but some of his more like introspective, emotional lines have come off really well.
True. His delivery is great.
Yeah. Honestly, Noah's the only one I'm not 100% sure of yet, but that might just be because we haven't heard enough of him talk.
And I think Noah is a little bit soft-spoken, so he speaks not exactly in a way that you would expect for a protagonist in a JRPG, but I think it will grow easily by the time that we actually play the game. And his screens were great in that trailer, so I think he has the actor actually has the range to do great. And about Lance, so far it's funny because Lance is basically Ryan to me. His personality is almost 100% the same. But I like that. I'm not complaining. Ryan was super fun on the first Xenoblade. Just about the quality of production, the music. Oh my god, the music is amazing.
Oh,
I saw that
yeah.
emotional song by the beginning that looks like it is the same singer for Xenoblade 2, and it is just those songs that you know will make you cry eventually when we actually play the game.
Yeah, I'm really happy that they released one of the battle themes, the main theme, and this game's version of counterattack and engage the enemy. But now I just want them to release the other ones. Like, give us the elite enemy theme, give us the drifting soul theme, give us the unique monster theme.
I don't know if it already has a name, but that song that plays on the section that they start to explain the combat, so good.
Oh yeah, that should be the elite enemy theme. I think. Yeah.
Wow, it's amazing as expected.
It has some Xenoblade X vibes to me, at least at the very start, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah, it sounds a little bit more experimental, a little more different than usual than the classic rock and roll for Xenoblade battle themes. I also want to hear you will know our names of this game, which we'll probably get soon also. But I'm okay waiting for the final game for those. I think, to be honest, I think after this direct, I will not watch anything, I think. Because usually on the launch trailer is when Nintendo starts with the spoilers all the way. I remember, I think Xenoblade 2 on the launch trailer had a lot of scenes from Chapter 8, Chapter 9, so end game stuff.
Agreed. I do wonder if we're going to get anything big, because we're still a little over a month out. So if they wanted to put in another trailer before our launch trailer, they definitely could. But I think we're probably going to get maybe like a little something during a direct. And then we'll get a launch trailer, and I hope we don't get too much other than that, because as much as I love looking at this and theorizing and talking to people about all of this stuff, I do hope we have some big surprises.
Some surprises, yeah. No, I agree. I think the Xenoblade Twitter, the Monopone, will still be posting some stuff, but nothing mind-blowing. Maybe he will recap some stuff that we saw in the direct, or give a little more bit of detail, just because I think in Japan it is really strong, this marketing idea of posting something about the game every day. I think Splatoon also did something different. Some games have this kind of marketing, and I think just to keep the info dump going, they'll try to make some posts, but not good super revelations, because we already know a lot of stuff about the actual game.
Yeah, I've really been enjoying all the Twitter posts. They've been fun.
Me too.
Like, before the direct came out, it's been fun to kind of just wake up in the morning and see, hey, let's see what they talk about this time.
I wish Nintendo of America would do something similar. I don't think it would need to be on the Nintendo account, but they could similarly create a Xenoblade specific account and just translate the stuff.
It would be nice.
Yeah. But yeah, this direct gave us a lot of information. Now, I think we talked most of the stuff that we had about the story, but if we remember something more by the end, we can also talk, because there was a lot, and there's a lot of plot points and speculation and theories. But the other aspect from the direct was the exploration. They started to talk about these boundless worlds, and it doesn't shock anyone that the game looks completely amazing. Like, it seems to be using the same engine of Xenoblade 2 and Torna, but of course really well optimized. The resolution, which is one of my biggest issues with Xenoblade 2, seems to be way better here. I can actually see the faces of the characters when I'm exploring. And of course, the scenarios, it is kind of curious, because they do not look super... how can I say, super different, because a lot of the stuff that we are seeing on the screen they are bringing from past games.
Yep.
Oh, so at the same time you're saying, okay, this is new, but I recognize that, I recognize this, and you start to see those little nods to past games in the series, or this crazy mix, like for example, we have some stuff from one of the last areas from Xenoblade 2 with the Machina Forest from Xenoblade 1,
Yep.
and all meshed together. So it is really
It's awesome.
different. Yeah, it looks awesome. I like that approach.
Yeah, it's also funny because I think most of the areas we've seen that have been a mix of areas have been pretty thematically similar ones. Like kind of the big opening field with the opening field from 2, and like the big water area from 1 with the big water area from 2.
Yeah.
But the fact that they mixed kind of like this big foresty area from 1 with this area from 2 that is definitely not that, it creates this really cool contrast and mix, and I hope we have more areas like this.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I mean, the whole thing that also caught my attention is that they did not confirm that, but I'm still interested to know is how connected the world actually is. If it is like Xenoblade X, or if it is more like Xenoblade, the first Xenoblade. But looking at some of the vistas that we saw on this trailer, you can kind of see different biomes from the distance. So it kind of gives me the impression that they are built in a way to look like they are connected. Maybe there's something that, of course, you cannot explore the whole area since the beginning, but they seem to be, of course, way more connected than 2, and maybe even more than 1. Because a lot of people praise that 1 was connected, but I think it was cooler as a concept than how it works in the actual game. Because in the actual game, you could see pretty clearly that you had those corridors that connected one area to the other.
Yeah, there were only a few places in 1 where you could directly kind of see like the area transitions.
Yeah.
The first one that comes to mind is going from Machina Forest to Valak Mountain, where you could see the kind of forest give way to all this.
And it was awesome.
Snowy environment. Yeah, and here, like you said, it's so bizarre because you see these intersections of like 3 very different looking biomes.
Yeah.
There's just one next to each other, which is not at all anything we've seen in 2 or even 1. And it definitely gives off the impression that, hey, is this open world in some way? Is this more open than what we've had so far?
Yeah.
And I mean, it doesn't need to necessarily be that, because we've seen that Xenoblade does a fantastic job even with just kind of these open area concepts. But I really want to know if they're, after, 7 years since X, we're going back to the open world. It'll be really interesting to see how they kind of figure that out, especially because we've seen in the water area that we have a boat. So assuming we have other vehicles, that could be a way of helping traverse this huge open world, if that is what we do have.
Yeah, no, to be honest, I don't want something super connected. I think what I really want to see is like that, something that we had on Xenoblade Chronicles X, is that transition of biomes, that you are walking on this place and suddenly things start to change around you. It is not from, for example, in Xenoblade 1, when you go from Machina Forest to Valak Mountain, it's like you are in a forest, then you enter a loading screen, and suddenly you are on this snowy area, totally different. So I would love to see the more connected, like more
it being a bit more
look.
progressive. Yeah.
Just these transitions areas. But so far things are looking really good. Now, something that I think they didn't show, but something that I missed was kind of a big city or a bigger urban area. The first Xenoblade had Alcamoth, but I kind of hate Alcamoth because it is so big and it is so samey. You have to walk a lot to get to the places, and everywhere kind of looks the same.
But it has escalators. The escalators are fun.
True. The escalators are really fun.
Yeah.
But
no, I see what you mean.
Something, compared to something like Indo in Xenoblade 2, I loved Indo because it was big, but it felt such this holy place with this different architecture, and you really were into the atmosphere of that place. You know, I really like that, and not only Indo, but other places like a smaller town like Torrigoth. It was technically a smaller town, but it was so complex because there was like this whole area where you had the houses and they were super down there. like Torres house in a place below the city, so complex. It's so, it feels so real when you actually explore the city, and actually find these different places. So with the idea of colonies, I don't know how many big cities we'll actually see, because those colonies are like a more man-made space with those cabins and stuff like that. It's not like with huge buildings and all that stuff. Because what I'm trying to say is that I love to see some architecture in those games. So I want to
Which
see
makes
those
sense.
big buildings. Yeah. I think in one of the moments, in one of the vistas that we saw, it was like this place that was above the sea, similar to Alchemov.
Honestly, that was one of my concerns too, after thinking about it, is if everything's going to be this sort of colony where it's all just these random tents set up with like a big Varanus behind it, that's going to end up being a little dull. So I hope that there's some actual towns to break it up. And I think we can definitely think of a few. Like, if I remembering the first trailer, there's this scene where Senna is walking in like this big mechanical city. Looks very much like something from Kevas. So that's probably a city that might be whatever this new Alchemoth structure is. Maybe Kevas' capital. If that is a city we can explore, then we can assume there's probably something similar for Agnes that's based in something in Xenoblade 2. We can probably assume that whatever is at Sword March and is part of Vandam's group is probably going to be another city. So that would be 3. Hopefully we have more unique designs, because man, all these tents get a little bit boring.
Yeah. I mean, we know that Takahashi likes to put a little bit of science fiction and those super modern cities. So I'm pretty sure we'll have some cool stuff by the end of the day. We saw some glimpses already, but I think we'll actually be able to explore those areas.
Yeah, on that note, I'm actually really curious, because we've seen, like you mentioned, that big floating city that looks like it's probably Alchemoth, and it would make a lot of sense for that to be Kevas' capital. But what would Agnes's capital be? Right? Because there's not really huge cities from Xenoblade 2, like a single huge city from Xenoblade 2 that would really fit.
Yeah, they need to have one. I wonder, because technically if we say that Melia is the queen of this side, so it has to be Alchemoth, yes. And Nia is on the other side, so it would be Gormori, but I'm not sure.
Korrigoth doesn't really have that vibe.
Yeah, or maybe Morardain, because Gormoti was a
that is
colony
true, yeah.
of Morardain, so it would make sense also, I think.
Yeah, I do have a bit of a theory from that, because in one of the, I think it's actually a couple of scenes in the direct, when they're just kind of traveling the area, we're looking through stuff, there's an area that they go through that is called the Dana Desert. And I don't know if you remember what the Dana Desert is in Xenoblade 2, but that's the desert in Torna.
Yeah, I would say Torna, yes.
So that doesn't make much sense, because given what happens to Torna in Xenoblade 2, unless there's just a random desert floating around underneath the World Tree.
Man, I didn't notice the same name.
Yeah, it's the same name, which is why it's like, how did that get there? So
somehow Torna has returned. Yes.
Yeah. Somehow the world merging caused some really weird stuff in terms of geography, and that's made me wonder if maybe similar to how Alchemoth might be the center of power, and that was a main location in Future Connected. Oresco, which is Torna's capital, is going to be the seat of Agnes's power, because that was also a main location in the Golden Country. And it would fit with what we've seen of just kind of Agnes's general design, where a lot of the uniforms of soldiers and outfits and whatnot kind of have a very Torna-esque vibe, where the primary color is white, there's a lot of red accents and ribbons and whatnot. I feel like that would make sense, although it still doesn't answer the question of how the heck Torna is back.
Yeah. I mean, if we are taking into consideration talking about merging both worlds and somehow things got... It can be possible, I think. Because, I mean, even when we imagine how Morifa is mixed with Machinar, it doesn't make a lot of sense if you try to think about that. How this actually occurred. So I don't think it's out of the imagination. It's curious because... It's a DLC, so I would not expect that to actually return. But I like that. I think it's I love the Torna Titan in the DLC, so I think it's one of the great Titans actually in the whole game.
Yep.
So it would be interesting. And beyond that, Takahashi loves a desert. Almost all of his games, like Xenogears, is basically only desert. So I would not. It's not weird that he's actually bringing this back. Cool. I think the exploration in this game will be really fun because you'll not only be actually exploring the game, but looking out for those Easter eggs and connections.
Yeah,
so
there's a lot
be like
of them.
Imagine exploring those places and trying to actually wonder from where it actually is.
Yeah, from the direct itself, a few areas like Hot War Melnath's Shoulder, which is an area from Gormott. There were Orion tunnels, which also confirms in some way that we're going to be traveling inside of the Orion Titan, I guess.
Because we know the Titan's there, yeah.
Yeah, so there's definitely going to be a lot that we're going to get to see and explore. And it seems like the navigation system is probably going to be pretty good from what we've seen.
Yes, amazing. Because we know the problems that we had with 2, and I was one of the... Because 2 was my first Xenoblade, so can you... with the exception of X. But it was my first Xenoblade from the 1 and 2, and it was really rough some moments to actually understand where I had to go. And I really like the approach that they follow, which is kind of similar to the follow ball with Xenoblade X. I don't know if you remember that, but it was like a ball that you had to follow to fit your path. But I like that they are actually integrating in the actual game, inside the world of the game. Because even though it was awesome to see the point lines in Xenoblade Definitive Edition, you were kind of always looking to the map and not to the world sometimes. So I like how they integrated that from a point of view of the gameplay. It seems it would be really helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'll make for some very fun exploring. Just kind of, you are following this line, but you are kind of having to look at the environments while doing so. So it does seem nice. And the system itself, like you said, is it seems like it's going to be an improvement over 2, which is nice. It's nice to see that they take feedback into consideration.
Exactly.
When doing all of this.
Super small detail that I noticed in that exploration is that for the first time, I think, in a Xenoblade game, with the exception of X, but when the character is running and he stops running, there's an animation for him stopping. So it gives a little more weight to the character, because on Xenoblade 1 and 2, the movement is it's JRPG movements. Like, you can't expect much. And it's weird that sometimes they ask you to do some platforming because it is really janky, but it's classic JRPG movements. But I like to see the character having a little more weight to the movements, how Noah stops, you can actually feel the animation.
Yeah, I almost wonder if there's some kind of running animation or something. Like there's the option to talk about running speed.
I was thinking about that.
Because it also looks like there's a few moments where... I haven't looked at the trailer super closely for this, but it looks like there's some moments where they are running faster than we've seen them, walk. So I do wonder if they added that in.
Yeah, it definitely... There's times where the animation definitely seems like they are actually running for sure. And of course, it's not like Xenoblade X, but it seems more than 1 and 2. So I wonder if it is like a button to run, or if it simply is the person putting the analog to the fullest and then they automatically start to run. Either of those are good for me. I never had an issue with Xenoblade 2. Of course, after I discovered the deeds to make you run faster, it helped me a lot. Mm-hmm. But in general, I really like to explore. And we saw that fast travel is returning. And I hope it is as fast as Xenoblade Definitive Edition, because that game is almost instantaneous, the fast travel. I mean, if you are traveling to the same area that you already are, it is instantaneous. If it is for another area, it's just a little bit more. So I like to see that. I like how instantaneous it can be sometimes. Yeah,
the Direct definitely made it look very fast. Whether that's some kind of editing magic. Yeah. We'll have to see. But it's reassuring. It would be nice to have the game itself just run that fast, run that efficiently. And to some extent, I could believe it, because it kind of feels like Monolith has just constantly been improving their work with the engine.
Totally.
Like, you compare Xenoblade 2 to even just Torna, because Torna made a lot of changes that ended up being for the better, even just from like an optimization standpoint. And then you look at what they did with Xenoblade 1 and Future Connected, and it really does seem like they're refining everything that they can do with this engine on the Switch.
I have the impression that with each game, it's like I can feel the developers excited to try new stuff, you know? Because even when you look at Torna was just a DLC, but they added so much new stuff. They created a new combat system. The filter, the color filter is totally different in their game. There's a blur filter in the background who is also very different. There's an effect in the silhouettes of the characters. So they are always trying, they always want to implement more and to do more, and I love to see that. Yeah. And this is something that I said to a friend of mine. I think with Xenoblade 1, Monolith had the time, but they did not have the money to create the super game that they want. With Xenoblade 2, they had the money, but they did not have the time. And with Xenoblade 2, I think they have the time and the money to make the game in the way that they want. So yeah, it is fantastic.
It's great.
I think we can talk about some of the mechanics that are, of course, related to exploration. We saw that the affinity chart is returning, and it looks very similar to Xenoblade 1.
Yeah, personally, I am very happy with that. Although the affinity chart was a bit of a pain to fill out in Xenoblade 1 because of all the talking I had to do to the NPCs and all of the kind of optional affinity links
that you 100
get.
Presents.
Yeah, well, it's just like either if you talk to this person, then this happens and you can't get this affinity link because suddenly they're not friends anymore. Stuff like that made completing it a little bit of a pain, but it was still really fun. It was an incredibly good way of helping flesh out this world a bit, giving us a little bit more context on these characters and how these characters have all these interpersonal relationships, making them feel like they're not just NPCs exactly. They still have like their own lives and people they care for and whatnot. And I'm just really happy to see that back. It's something that I did miss in 2. It's not like
for sure.
a huge thing, but I do think it could have been really nice, because especially because 2 has all of these NPC characters. Like, 2 puts a lot of focus on them through their side quests. A lot of these characters have developments and stories and things that happen to them, and having that kind of affinity chart to help sort of represent this would have been really cool.
Totally. I think they wanted to implement in Xenoblade 2, but probably they did not have the time, because even Torna had the community system. I think this is in the DNA of a Xeno game, because Xenoblade X has, Xenoblade 1 has, and now it is only natural that it is actually returning. The only thing that I don't want to see, and that I'm a little bit worried, is affinity, needing to have a specific affinity to unlock a heart-to-heart. I want the heart-to-heart to be unlocked just because I have the character like
that was annoying, yes.
Yeah, I found that a little bit annoying. Now, at least with Xenoblade Chronicles 3, you have all the characters in your party at all times, so if it'll probably be a little easier to develop the affinity through battle, because in one, if I wanted to develop the affinity between 2 specific characters, I had to battle a lot with them to develop a little bit more and stuff like that. So it was a little of a pain to actually do that. Yeah.
For what it's worth, I don't think we've seen any affinity system between party members, so we can hope that that's not here. Yeah. We'll just have to see. But I did like seeing the affinity chart as well, just because it helped confirm a lot of details for the game. Just kind of looking at the character portraits and the menu options and whatnot.
Oh yeah, I didn't stop to look at what.
For instance, we get to see that there is an Urian, which I think we have not seen any Urians in any trailers or whatnot, so that sort of confirms that they're back. There's a random robot on the affinity chart, which, like, I don't know why. It's not like a machina. It's straight up a robot, so I don't know what is the deal with that. But we do see that there's also the heroes on the affinity charts, which I thought was interesting. I think the one we saw has Valdi and Alexandria on it. So they're going to have some kind of connections to other people just in general, which is nice to see. It helps implement them into the world itself, helps ground them a little bit. There's a little section, I think near the bottom, that mentions a Collectopedia card, which could imply that the Collectopedia is back, which would also make me happy because that's another aspect that was missing from 2 that I really enjoyed. In general, there's this system to give NPCs items, which is sort of like Xenoblade 1 trading, but it seems like it's more of a kind of request mechanic, where they need an item to fulfill some quest or just to raise affinity or something, so you have to give them one. And then one of the bigger ones that I noticed is, and this is jumping ahead a little bit, but in terms of the heroes, one of the ones we saw called Fiona had these 2 little horns on her head, kind of like an ogre or like a traditional Japanese Oni. And we see in the affinity chart there's another one there. So presumably this is a new race in the game. Probably one that's from Agnes or the world of Xenoblade 2. So that's pretty interesting because I think that's the first like new race that we've basically seen in Xenoblade 3.
Yeah, so far. The majority of the characters look pretty human so far, I think. You said about being an Orion. I imagine if Vandan is an Orion on this game.
Well, he's missing the kind of the like trademark scales on the face.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
He has a very similar facial structure, but he's missing a few of the typical Orion traits.
True.
So I don't quite know, and admittedly, the person on the affinity chart doesn't 100% look like it, but they're the closest we've seen where they have this kind of like greenish hair, which is closer to what we've seen Orions have, and they have like something on their cheeks that look a lot like Orion scales. And it would also just be very weird if they just excluded it for some reason, like just randomly, Orions just died. Orions died on the way back to their home planet. Don't think about it.
Something has gone wrong.
Like, yeah.
I mean, look at their Titan. I mean, it's pretty.
That is true. That would actually be interesting if, because of what's happened to the Orion Titan, they're a much smaller group and they're more like refugees in each area. There's only like 1 or 2 of them per area because there's just not many of them left. That could be an interesting kind of like gameplay story element.
I think this whole stuff about the sword and the Orion will probably be explained by the end of the game, I assume, or close to the end. I mean, we're gonna get this super cutscene with a lot of exposition, explaining every little thing like we had on 2. So I'm looking forward to that. Yeah,
but it's interesting how there's one scene where the party is fighting Wild Ride in what looks to be the Alchemoth capital based on the architecture. And in the background you see the Orion Titan with the giant hole in it. So maybe the Kevis capital is like positioned right next to it?
Close.
I don't know what exactly that implies with like, did Kevis blow it up? But we'll have to see.
Yeah, that one thing is for sure. There's a lot of things that we don't know yet. We still have a lot of surprises on the way. Now, also something interesting in relation to the mechanics is the rest spots, which they are kinda returning from Torna. I love that. I think it's amazing. You have all that stuff to do in just one place. I think mechanically it works wonder for the game.
Yeah, and I agree.
It is super expanded here because we have cooking, we have like talking about stuff that happened to get some quests from NPC or from stuff that occurred. I don't know exactly how that stuff will appear on the screen, and I mean, I don't know if they actually show a heart-to-heart or just a conversation. It's not super clear.
I don't think they show a heart-to-heart, but because I would assume heart-to-hearts are also voice-acted since they were in
Yeah, I was thinking about that.
But yeah, it definitely seems like there's some kind of option there at the rest spots, and it's, like you said, it's nice to see back. It was a great addition in Torna that also kind of, it gave the party an opportunity to bond, which we see in the direct as well, where you see all of them kind of like performing activities together, which is just always fun.
The animations are amazing.
Yeah, I love Senna and Lance having this like push-up contest while Noah and Mio just jam out on flutes.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. There's also the gems returning from 1, but from what I saw, they are more similar to the items from 2, right? I think the way that they actually work.
It's really unclear to me. I'm kind of happy that gem crafting is back because I think it's kind of an unpopular opinion, but I actually really enjoyed gem crafting in Xenoblade 1. I thought it was really fun and relaxing, and it was fun once you got a hang of it, how to, like, min-max your percentages to get the best gems. But you're right that in 3, it looks very different. It looks a lot like the Ox Core system in terms of feeding items into them. But the way they're actually equipped is very bizarre, because we did not see them being equipped to actual characters. They're just in this menu where you have, I believe it's 5 gems per category. 3 of them are the 3 main class roles, and then there's another one which I think is like gray and has a star as a symbol. I just have no idea what's going on there. Is if it's like a general, hey, you put this gem here and the entire party gets a buff, or it's like, hey, everyone of this role gets a buff. Like, it's a very, if so, it's a very different system from what we had in any other Xeno game.
Maybe they are trying to. I think some people are overwhelmed with the Ox Core system, because you have like 3 blades for characters, and each blade needs a pair of those X cores, and you have to craft those X cores. So it's like you had to go like through hundreds of menus to actually equip them. And I think they are trying to fix that. Even the gems, I like the gems. The first time that I played the first Xenoblade, I hated the gems because I did not understood how they actually
they're not
worked.
well explained.
It was like I was in a boss with a high level of Spike, and then I would actually go and make some gems against Spike, and then we'll use them. But apart from that, I rarely use them. So, but they were equipped on the weapons, which I think was pretty easy. But again, kind of the same problem. You have all those options, all those different weapons, and you have to change your weapon, but you keep your gems. So, I think if this is for the whole party, they are probably trying to make it a little bit more straightforward.
Yeah, we did see that it looks like accessories are back based on that one shopping menu that we saw, which to me also kind of implies that we're back to a Xenoblade 2 style of equipment, so I don't think we're going to see armors return.
No, I think the outfits are more related to the classes. But you can change, right?
Yes, actually, that was one thing the website did show, is that there's a specific menu for fashion gear. Cool, I think the one we saw was with Noah, and it has Noah as a sword fighter outfit, a default nothing outfit, which probably just defaults to his current class, and I don't know what the name of it was, but it's basically his wartime outfit that we see in the opening cutscenes.
Oh, I see. Oh, interesting. So it's not only the outfits from the classes. There's more. Yeah,
there's at least the regular wartime outfits. So cool. That also opens up the possibility of us getting more, which is neat. We can probably assume that we're going to get that through whatever the expansion pass, like challenge mode or whatever. They're probably going to be some additional outfits from that.
I wonder how much we can personalize the heroes, if we can change their classes. Probably not.
I would assume not. I would assume that the heroes aren't really customizable in any way, aside from being able to choose which one you're bringing with you.
Yeah.
I don't know. It'd be interesting if they have their own equipment, but it'd be a lot to manage, right? Because we're going to have up to 17 heroes.
Because you already have to choose one of the heroes, so it would be like a lot to actually customize them.
Yeah. Plus, it's only like one of 7 party members in battle, so it arguably doesn't matter as much as the being able to customize the core 6. The 6 Noahs.
The 6 Noahs.
Yeah, I saw that online. I think that's going to be the official name of the main party.
I was wondering if they did that scene on the direct.
Yes, that was amazing.
If it was actually a reference to that. Oh, it was a good reference. Yeah. One of the...
They're all clones. Cloning pods, that's what they're for.
Something funny with the heroes is that this is the first main Xenoblade game where we do not actually have a party member who is an Opon, who is fixed on your team, like Tora and Ricky. And when I started playing Xenoblade for the first time, I kind of hated the Nopons, but that's because we started with Xenoblade X, and Tatsu knows that Tatsu is literally the worst.
Tatsu is food, though.
Oh my god, man. Every beginning of the chapter, the same joke.
Yeah.
So, But after a while, they did grow on me. I actually started to see that they could be cute. But I confess that every time that I can, I do not use them in my party. Like Morag was my tank.
Yep.
And I rarely used Rick because when I played for the first time, I thought that Rick was kind of underdeveloped. But then I played again, and then I noticed that he has his moments. And right now, I finally don't have to worry about that. All the characters are not Noppons. But I know a lot of people love them and will use the two Noppons on the team as fixed members, probably.
Yeah, I do think we have to comment on the Noppons. If we're going to talk about Manana and Riku, I think we have to talk about Riku's voice. Because I don't know why they made him the most mature voice that they've ever had any character in like any Xenoblade game. I don't understand, especially because in the Japanese dub he sounds pretty normal, childlike, very Noppon. And then in the English dub, they just made him sound like Batman.
Yeah, he's like 100% serious.
It's amazing, and I love it, but I do not understand how they came up with that casting decision.
Where he's like, "This is bad, Noah."
It's like you have Tora going like, meh, Tora, and then you have Riku who's like, Noah, this is terrible. You must evacuate before. Like, I don't understand.
No. It's amazing. They did something similar with Nira on Xenoblade 2. I don't know if you remember. He was like a character from Argento. And I love that because I think something that Xenoblade 2 actually did a lot was to expand the Noppon verse. Because in the first Xenoblade, all Noppons was like those little potatoes. Even Riki was kind of similar to all the other ones.
Yeah.
And then on 2 we have like Bana, who barely resembles the other Noppons, who is totally different and all of that with a lot of style. And in Argento you find all those different Noppons with different outfits and different personalities. And even Tora has a mohawk and all that style that he has and all that stuff.
Yep.
So I like that. Even Manana and Rico, they look kind of cool. People were comparing them to Rex and Pyra, which I can kind of see it, but it is so subtle that I don't think it is actually intended.
I feel like for Riku, I don't know that it is for Banana because she still has a very different style and whatnot. I feel like it might be for Riku just because that hair is so distinctive.
Yeah.
But I guess we'll see. Maybe Riku having a Batman voice is them apologizing, Rex having the race car screams, who knows?
Maybe maybe they're trying to fix the timeline, something like that. So, anything else about exploration that we didn't talk about?
I think that was mostly it. There's a few little things like we see a return of some kind of treasure trove. I think they're called supply drops in the trailer, which was kind of interesting. I wonder if there's any reason why you need 2 characters to open it. If that's just kind of, an aesthetic thing, or if there's actually some kind of gameplay mechanic to it, because you're going to have presumably 6 characters in your party at all times. So I don't know if there's any reason it would force you to have 2.
I wonder if it is field skills. So you need 2 characters with lock picking or something like that.
Yeah, that's one thing.
This animation.
That is one thing we didn't really see too much of in the trailer, but I think was talked about in a whole bunch of tweets in the last couple of months. That we have the return of field skills, but now they're not exactly field skills.
Yeah, I think they are pretty different.
Yeah, they're tied to just normal traversal abilities. So things like grinding on a rail or like a rope, which we've seen a few times in the trailer, is a field skill. Even just climbing certain vine walls is a field skill, and they're tied to your characters in your party. You basically have access to them at all times, so there's not really any need to go into menus and start swapping stuff around like there was in Xenoblade 2.
That was the biggest issue.
Yeah, so I mean that's nice to see. I wonder if the boat we see in a few trailers is technically tied to a field skill?
I was going to talk about that. I think it can maybe. I think maybe one of the characters can ride the boat, can actually drive the boat or something like that. Maybe Noah, because Noah, his name is kind of related to a big boat.
You know what? Yeah, that would be funny. Yeah.
Maybe it can be related to that.
Yeah.
I think there will be a lot of exploration on the water on this game, because not only we saw the boats, but there's these screenshots on the sites that you showed me where the characters are actually fighting on the water.
Yeah,
So,
like they'll be standing like waist deep in water and yet they're still fighting, which is interesting.
yeah, I imagine like when he uses his special as he jumps, will he
Yeah, I
jump
don't
on the
know
water?
how that's gonna work. Well, you know,
But again, he it's Noah. He's kind of close to Jesus, so
Yeah,
maybe he walks. Maybe something along those lines. But it is really interesting, and this gigantic monster on the water is also awesome. I love to see that they are not there's not only monsters returning, but we already saw a lot of new ones that look really interesting.
yeah, it does make you wonder if there's going to be any battles from the boat. Like, if you're in a boat and you run into an enemy, are you going to battle from within the boat, or are you just not able to
Yeah.
encounter enemies when you're in it?
I mean, because they show it so little, so I'm wondering if it's just a small mechanic, you know? But I don't know.
Yeah, we do see one of the heroes, Valdi, is sort of a mechanic, so I imagine they could be tied to actually like being in charge of the boat or teaching you how to use a boat.
True.
Because we do see the archer character, Juniper. I guess, I don't know if we actually see it in the direct, but there was a tweet introducing her that showed her grinding on a rail and attacking the party, which is
Yeah,
also
I
kind
remember
of...
that.
Yes, as a side note, for some reason all the heroes start by attacking the party. I don't know why. But the fact that Juniper is grinding on a rail makes it seem like the heroes are going to be teaching you field skills. So it would make sense for
yeah.
Valdi to teach you how to use a boat if he's a mechanic.
I wonder if, again, making the comparison with Blades, with each Blade we have the awakening cutscene. So maybe each hero has this first moment, this first cutscene, which is their introduction, and it's always the same recipe where they are actually showing their field skill and attacking the party. I wonder
Yeah.
if it is in that same vibe.
I mean, we've
Interesting.
seen Valdi, Xeons, and Junipers, I believe. And
Yeah.
Junipers was right. Junipers was also really cool. Like, I hope you can put a clip of it in the video itself, because it's this super cool shot with a dynamic camera angle of her zooming down this rail and firing these explosive arrows at Mio and
Yeah.
Yuni. It looks super, super good.
It's awesome. It's awesome. They posted on Twitter, right?
Yeah.
I can use that. No, yeah, so far I love the design of all the heroes. They look so awesome. And there's some really different ones here, like Gray, and there's also Alexandria. I think she was beautiful, her design.
Yes.
A lot of interesting characters.
I really like Ashera. Kind of looks like a mix of Ryan and Charla.
I saw a comparison
yeah.
to that.
Which is like, I wonder what that could mean.
Actually, I think she looks specifically similar to Ryan Charla from the Definitive Edition. Because in the Definitive Edition, their faces are kind of a little bit more
Like
different.
in terms of the hair, the kind of facial structure, the
yeah.
eyes, like, yeah.
She remind me a lot of them, yeah. I mean, they can pull something like that. Oh, this character is a son of two old characters. It would be kind of awesome.
Yeah, it also kind of brings into question how that would work with the whole term system and everything we know from that. Like, that there's a lot we don't know about how characters are born and whatnot, because all we see is like the cloning pods and whatever. So like, characters are born at age 10, but also we have characters like Ethel who are clearly older than 20, so like they started a term late or something. There's some weird stuff in terms of how characters are born or pop up.
There's some crazy sci-fi stuff happening in the backgrounds that we'll learn when the game eventually comes out. It is curious. We are already talking about the heroes, but I think we can already enter in the battle system. I think we can actually say that we already understand a lot of this battle system. I can say for sure that I already know more about this battle system than I knew about Xenoblade Chronicles 2 battle system when I finished the game. Because the first time that I played the Xenoblade 2, I think in the last battle I actually learned how to make a full burst. So it took a while to understand the system.
Yeah.
But with this one, I can already grasp a lot of the stuff. I would say that despite what some people, because for people who are not actually follow the Xenoblades and who actually play those games actively, this all sounds completely insane with how much information is going on.
Yeah, there's a
But
lot
I
of
am
UI.
I am under the impression that this is simpler than Xenoblade 2,
Yes.
because I think that the whole combo system with the elements was really confusing for a lot of people, even though I love that system. I love that system. But I think here it will be a little, everything will be a little more, everything will build upon the other elements, like the fusion of the arts, the whole Ouroboros stuff, which is really easy to understand because it's tied to the story. And I think the only thing that I still need to learn more about is the chain attacks.
Yeah, chain attacks
Because-
look weird.
Yeah, they look really different.
They're like Persona 5 all-out attacks
Yeah,
in terms
yeah.
of the cut-ins. But
I mean, from what I saw, you start the chain attack and you have like 3 options, and I don't know
Yeah.
which option does, and then you choose like the order in which each of the character attacks, and there's this TP counter, which I
Yeah.
don't know which actually is.
tactical points, I think, is what they technically are.
Right. Yeah.
But it
I
is
mean,
weird. It's
it
not
probably
clear. Like,
has to combo something. There's something you have to build up.
Yeah, there is a chain attack gauge, so that would be how you trigger it. But it's not clear, like, what are the 3 characters you pick between? Like, how, what makes those 3 characters the ones that pop up as an option?
Yeah.
Why is it that sometimes you have an Ouroboros form as an option? What are the ways of raising tactical points? Is there a way to get different bonus effects from the different characters? There's just a lot in that system that
I think a lot of the
yeah.
complexity will be there.
Yeah, but everything
something-
else is, it's a lot to take in if you just look at the amount of stuff on the screen in a vacuum.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's all structured pretty well. You have
I agree.
all the buttons, all the arts correspond to the D-pad and your right side buttons, and you have enemy health at the top, player health on the left. I don't feel like it's necessarily that overwhelming once you kind of come to understand why all the UI is placed in the way that it is.
Yeah, I think, why people feel a little overwhelmed with Xenoblade 3 in particular? It's because they're trying to integrate the UI within the world of the game.
Yeah,
So,
they're making
for
it
example,
diegetic.
there's this big indicator when the character is being aggroed. So there's this line on top of its head, and then there's all these numbers going up when they are making damage, and we have 6 characters. So there's a lot of people making damage at the same time. And the actual UI with the buttons, it looks like it is kind of integrated in the world. It looks kind of transparent. It's not like it tries to feel a little more integrated. And I think when you actually play it, it will be, I think it will feel even better than the one on 2 and the one on 1.
Yeah.
I think everything can come together in a great way.
I think it'll click a little.
Yeah. Something interesting that I think we should note here, they didn't mention that in the actual direct, but they talk about that in Twitter. Something that really changed, and I think this will really change the dynamic, is that you don't need the party god to actually revive other characters. There's not those bars that you need to have, the 3 bars to revive each one of the characters. So the only thing that you lose when you're actually reviving a character is a little bit of time. And the chain attack bar is kind of totally different. It's this circle at the side of the screen who actually is unrelated to the party god. So I think this will change a lot of the dynamic. It is really interesting, because a big problem with Xenoblade is that when all of your characters are dying, and at any moment you can die, and when you die, if you don't have any party god, you are done.
Yeah, it's worth pointing out though that the that whole revival mechanic in 3 is tied to a healer class specifically. You need a healer class to be reviving people, or else.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a mechanic where basically the only people that can revive other party members are healers. So if you have a team of 6 attackers and one of them goes down, presumably they're just down. You don't have any ways of bringing them back. So it's some kind of
just
mechanic.
bad strategy.
Yeah, it's kind of a mechanic of, hey, technically, you can go into battle with like 6 attackers and start trying to kill someone, like beat an enemy before everyone in your party dies. But it's probably going to be better if you have a little bit of a balance to strike, where you have, a healer or two to make sure that's, you can revive your party members. You have a tank to help protect your attackers that look like they're going to be pretty squishy. And then you have some attackers for the damage dealing. And all of that seems really brought together by just how dynamic the combat looks. Like everything that they've added in terms of the dashes and dodge rolls helps you get like in and out of range. Helps you get in like that protective aura that looks like all the tanks have. It looks like it's going to be far more dynamic movement wise than any of the other battle systems.
I think we'll have even more action elements, right? Because Xenoblade is a mix of action and strategy, and I think there'll be even more stuff like you have to move your characters. For example, with healers, you have this circle of healing, and you have to be close to the other characters, so your positioning will be even more important.
Yeah, they have a lot more like kind of ranged aura style effects where you have to be in or out of a certain area to be able to avoid or gain effects, which is interesting.
I mean, I was a big fan of the potion system on Xenoblade 2 because it was really easy to revive even if he wasn't a healer. But I also like that. I think it's cool, and something big that we are forgetting to talk about is the fact that now you can change the character that you control at any time. Yeah. So, for example, you mentioned about only the healer can revive. You don't need to depend on the AI for this. So if a character is dead, you can just change to the healer and go actually revive them. Yeah. And I think this all come together to this very dynamic battle system, as you said.
It's a bit hard to wrap your head around the whole being able to switch your party members at any time, because that means you're going to have 6 options in battle at any time.
Yeah.
So like the idea of it's going to make optimized fights really interesting to watch, because there might be a lot of switching at specific times to get specific
it's going
arts
to get
off.
crazy.
But it's like, how do you manage all that? It's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out. Are there reasons to like switch constantly in battles? Or are you usually going to want to stick to one character until something happens and you want to stick to another? Like, I'm very curious to see what they're going to do with that to make it feel like more than a gimmick, to make it feel like a really well integrated part of the battle system.
Yeah, because I think this specifically is the kind of thing that I don't want to be super necessary. Because I know that for a lot of people this will be too much, because it already is too much to control one character playing Xeno 2 and Xeno 1 for a lot of people. I think it's specifically for us, like we've been in this situation, we are, if I could just control this character and make he actually makes what I want, it would be amazing. And a lot of the times I think it will be helpful for the combos, like topple, break, topple, launch, and smash. I think it will be really helpful for that. But I just hope that this won't be an excuse to not make an even better AI of the PC, because I think for a lot of people it would be great if they can just play without worrying about changing the character.
Yeah, just stick to like Noah or Mio or their favorite. That's true. I do think the combo system is interesting in and of itself, because for some reason the Direct only mentioned the topple launch smash route, even though we've seen the Days route in trailers, and I think we even saw it in the Direct itself, but it only made vocal mention of the launch smash route, which was odd. But the other thing we saw is that there was a very specific clip where we saw Uni using a burst art. It had a similar symbol to like topple, Days, whatever, but it was called burst, and it had a new symbol. And it looked like it was a follow-up to Days, where an enemy got dazed. Uni used the art, and there was this big like burst text that popped on screen, kind of like what would happen with Days or Launch or Smash, and the enemy got like flung away. So it looks like they're kind of adding another step to the break topple Days combo to parallel the break topple Launch Smash, which again, kind of like what's the difference here? Like, it's cool that it's a parallel, but like, what is going to be the advantage of going Launch Smash versus Days Burst?
Yeah, I think they'll have to make a case to actually convince when is the best time to use a Days and when is the best time to use Smash. I was wondering if Days would be best to just leave the enemy incapacitated for a while, while Smash is more to cause a lot of damage, how it was on 2. But I'm not 100% sure if they will follow that. And if they are adding this burst, I think it can be like a unique effect. Maybe it's a totally different effect. It'll be interesting to see that also.
Yeah.
We also had the fusion arts, which I think it's pretty cool concept because you can kind of combine the effects of 2 different arts into one. So when I saw you using in the direct, it looks like very powerful because you can fuse all these different effects into one enemy. I like the ways that they are expanding that.
That's a mechanic I'm interested in, but at the same time it feels sort of, if there was any mechanic in the battle system that I feel probably will be cut from whatever the next Xenoblade game is, I feel like fusion arts are probably it, because they feel some part of them feels a little bit gimmicky in a way, where it's just like you're just adding an artifact onto your other art, and that's kind of neat, but I don't know how practical it's necessarily going to be, as opposed to just, use one art, then use the other art you would have used the fusion art with anyways. It's interesting,
true, that makes sense.
It is impactful. Like there's a lot of impact when you use a fusion art, which is really cool. There's a lot of feedback, but I wonder if there's going to be anything in gameplay that's going to encourage you to use them. Maybe there's going to be stuff to boost like fusion art damage, or accessories or skills that will boost artifacts if they're specifically fusion arts. Something that'll kind of push the use of that a little bit more.
Yeah, I already saw that, but something that really hits me one of these days is that the QTAs are gone. The game does not ask you to press B, and I know I think this is generally considered lazy game design because you are just pushing buttons, but I really liked them on 2 because with the all the stuff that you added, like the cancel auto attack and those QTIs, at a certain moment I was playing and it felt almost like I was in a Riven, like I was pressing everything at the right time. Right. It felt almost like a Riven game, I really like how it worked. So I think it's not I'm not saying that this combat will be worse because of that, but it's just something that I think I'll miss a little bit. That's
true. It is interesting because Xenoblade 2 was definitely the game that used those QTEs the most. They were only kind of present in 1. I think you mostly use them for Burst Affinity and Blossom Dance, and then they were almost completely absent from X. I think they were only in X for the Soul Voice mechanic.
Yeah, exactly that.
So bringing it back to the situation where we haven't seen them at all in any way is...
Yeah, I think they're completely gone.
Yeah, they might just be kind of divorcing themselves from that mechanic entirely, which is a little interesting.
Yeah, at least we still have the amazing attack animations, so I'm fine with that.
Gosh, the attack animations are so good. There's like just some animations that are really, really well done. A lot of Noah's sword fighter animations. There was the one chain attack that started with Mio's Ouroboros form, and then transitioned to Noah's Ouroboros, where he starts riding the giant sword like a surfboard.
Man, that was awesome.
And then he does a trach and starts grinding on the enemy's face. It's great.
No, it's fantastic. I really like all the attack animations are even more crazier than the one on Xenoblade 2. I really like that. I think it makes the combat more satisfying to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, talking a little more, we already mentioned the heroes. But talking a little more about the implications of them in the actual combats, I love the idea. I think it's really cool to have like a special member that you can choose any one of these, and you can. It gives that same feeling, as I was saying, the same feeling of Blades, where you have all those amazing characters with different styles, and it kind of makes you can customize your style of gameplay a little bit because there's so many options of heroes and different characters, and. Yeah, I just love the concept. I love how they are implementing it, and I think a lot of people will be happy because they are not from a gacha system. You can actually get them from the story and all that stuff, so it is really cool. I'm loving this concept so far.
Yeah, I am a big fan of class systems in RPGs. I just recently beat Octopath Traveler, completed it, and I am just really... I'm really happy with what we've seen of the class system so far in 3. It just looks really fun. I love the ability of using all these different varied weapons. The heroes have some really interesting ones, like Alexandria having this whip sword, or Ashera having this like Darth Maul style like dual bladed sword. It's all a lot of variety that's very fun, and is also even more variety than Xenoblade 2 in some respects, because Xenoblade 2 had a lot of different blades, but they were restricted to what, like 9-ish main classes?
I think so.
Whereas here, there's 23, and they're all basically completely unique weapons between, like, a bow, a gun staff, a giant gun, a sword shield that also transforms into a Gatling gun, apparently. I don't know how Lance manages that, but it just makes for this, like, super varied combat system, and the class system itself has a lot of variety to it. One of the things that was confirmed when you were looking at all the different characters and all the different classes is that the classes have skills, which makes sense. That's kind of like the general system for classes in RPGs, that you have like your main attacks, which are the arts, and you have passive skills. But that's not something that Xenoblade has had in general that much. I mean, Xenoblade 1 did have a skill system, but it was tied to characters and it was kind of built in a weird way. And Xenoblade 2 had the driver affinity chart, which was, again, it was a skill system tied to characters. But here it's a skill system tied to the classes, and there's a whole bunch of them, presumably, because we see two of them per class, so already that's up to, 46 possible skills? And then we see for the Master Arts, we know that classes have up to 5 usable arts, and we see through Noah's class that they have at least 2 talent arts. So we know from the Master Arts little list that each class will give a character access to 2 of that class's arts plus their talent art. So there's some things left out, which means that there's a reason to use a certain class as your primary class, because you'll have access to that whole list of 5 arts plus however many talent arts we end up having, which also probably means that they'll also have skills that are exclusive to you using that class as a primary class. Basically, what it comes down to is that it seems like there's a lot of customization with that. There's a lot of different systems and mix and matching, which I am really excited to experiment with.
Yeah, true. That was something that I think Xenoblade never had to that level. Probably the blades were the closest that we have to a class system or something like that. Mm-hmm. And they're going full out here. And I like how it is not your usual style of classes like the mage and the swordman and stuff like that in classic JRPGs with medieval style. They are really Xenoblade style of classes, and I like them. I think it's really interesting. I'll probably... but here's the thing, there's a lot of them, and I kind of want to use a lot of them, but I'll probably choose one who fits best on my team to try to use it, or try to get the class. It's cool how you can get, like, maybe you're not using the character, but you are using his class, and the whole system of these arts is specific to a class, but you can use you can put in a specific character to use it in any moment. It's really cool to and give us even more customization. So yeah, I mean, I'm not always because I think Xenoblade was like probably one of the first big JRPGs that I actually finished, so I'm not that used with past JRPGs and how they work, but I think it's the first time that I'm looking at a complex system of classes and I'm actually really hyped to play. Mm-hmm. It actually make me want to experiment a lot with these characters.
Yeah, the first class-based RPG I played was Bravely Default, which was also one of the first like turn-based RPGs I played, and just that first experience of like, wait, I can mix this with this, like, wait, I can do that, like, it's really cool, and this looks like it's going to be offering something very similar. And I also, like you said, the fact that these are all kind of like unique classes is fun. The fact that they're tied to specific weapons is interesting, where you have like, this is the class that's use a whip sword, or this is the class that's use a bow, and then you also have the Full Metal Jaguar class, which is just you use two guns, just shooting people up, and it's also kind of interesting because Full Metal Jaguar is the name of Elma's class in X, so that's a pretty overt reference to X, which makes me wonder if maybe like they're just kind of pulling from more naming elements, which they've done in the past. A lot of art names are reused from arts in past games, and I think there's some arts reused from X, but that's still kind of interesting to see. It makes me wonder if we're going to get more X references in this game.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw Gray, the first thing that came to my mind with his guns was Minov from Torna.
Yeah.
But it is not like a colorful gun. It's actually a gun.
Yeah, it's a gun, yeah.
Yeah, it's a gun. So it really is more to Xenoblade X.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Gray himself is interesting because I don't think it's actually mentioned what, like, country he's affiliated with. So, I don't know what's up
I think he's kind of mysterious.
He's a bit
his
of
whole
like
thing is kind of being like that.
A mercenary. But, I mean, that's the other thing, right? Is all these different classes are tied to all these different heroes, and that means we're going to have all these different, like, personalities. Kind of like the Xenoblade Gacha system, where we're going to have all these different blades that all have unique traits. Exactly. I guess you could also just compare it to Xenoblade X, since the system is a little bit more similar to that. But it's going to be really fun. Even just already, we've seen a whole bunch of hero designs that are really cool. Like, personally, I really love Ashera. I think Alexandria looks fantastic. Juniper's design with, like, the whole bow is awesome. So, it's just fun to see. It's fun to talk about all these different character designs. It's also fun to see, like, the... I sort of wish they didn't have the silhouettes there, just so for the sake of, not kind of hinting at who's going to be here. But it's fun to kind of speculate still on, like, who are we going to get? Like, there's a silhouette that kind of looks like Kamaravi, so I guess he might join? And there's another one that's looks like an enemy in the Direct called the Mysterious Raider, which is this weird, like, robot that's a mix of Agnian and Kavesian technology. So I guess that's going to be a hero somehow? Man, and then there's, like, then there's, like, the blurred picture from that one, that one shot where it's like, for some reason, the character in the top left is blurred. Just like, who is that? Is that Van Damme? Because the colors sort of match Van Damme, but I don't know. It's just interesting.
I wonder why they would hide Van Damme. It doesn't make sense to me.
That's
Unless he
true.
has like a different form.
Yeah, I'm mostly running off of the fact that it looks like the list is chronological, and it's right before Valdi, so it's the very first slot, so it's gotta be one of the first characters you encounter. But you're right, we haven't seen Van Damme at all past the opening segments of the game. I think we may have talked about this a little bit before, but I'm wondering if maybe he's going to have a fake-out death, where sometime after Wild Ride you think he's died in some way, and that's why he's not present in the story. But maybe once you make it to Sword March, you see that he's returned, and then like he's actually alive, and then he joins your party as a hero. And that's why they're kind of like hiding it, because they don't want to...
Xenoblade has all kind of stuff like that, so
yeah.
you can always imagine. Something that I noticed is that he doesn't seem to have a weapon.
Yeah.
So I don't know if he's actually a fighter. Maybe he is. I mean, there's this time that he punches the ground, but not a lot.
His blade weapon is his fists.
Yeah, so, I mean, Laura was kind of like that in Torment. I'm not sure if he'll be a fighter or what will be his actually... what he will do in the story. Maybe he can be kidnapped also. I don't know. Because he's helping those guys with the Ouroboros stuff and all of that.
It is interesting that most of the heroes have... they look like they have similar blade weapons to the Six Noahs, where they have they have a tattoo, probably, that lets them summon the blade weapons. But characters like Riku and Manana don't. They just kind of carry the weapons with them, which are... I think it's Manana's cooking wok, and Riku has like this like multi-gun, like a multi-wrench that he uses as a weapon.
I wonder if it's able to get these classes from the two Noppons.
Well, it looks like we
just
can.
One class?
Yeah, it looks like I think they actually talked about that in a Twitter, where the class in Japanese is called Yumsmith, because it's a mix of, like yummy and smithing. And it looks like when the Noppon are wielding it, the Manana has a wok and Riku has like the gun. but when a character is using it, they use like both at the same time, sort of like a sword and shield. Which,
I remember seeing, yeah.
It's also interesting because, like, if those are not blade weapons, how do the main characters sort of unlock them as functional blade weapons? I guess that's just something that'll happen with the story.
Yeah, I wonder if they'll actually bother to explain that.
It does, yeah. I was
in a
gonna
word
say,
like this, I wonder what are the Nopons in a word like this? What are they actually doing?
yeah. Well, see, that's why I was wondering is, do the Nopons have the term system as well? Because the fact that we see Riku and Manana use these like very mundane tools that are just tools and aren't blades as their own weapons, make me wonder: do they have those tattoos?
I would say not, but because the Nopon seems to be like a race that transcends the Xeno world, because they appear on Xenoblade X, they appear on Xenoblade 2,
Yeah.
they appear on Xenoblade 1, so I think they kind of transcend the whole lore. They actually are something bigger. I would imagine something like that. It is. I think if they were actually involved in all this, we would see them in the battle. Because in the battlefield we did not see, most of it was some of those NPCs with those helmets fighting, so I don't think they are actually related.
Yeah,
But
maybe there's
I want to know the word building behind this.
maybe there's something where like the consoles can draw the energy from human-like races, but they can't draw it from Nopon, so they don't have to like clone them or something.
Maybe that will make sense. All right, we talked about the heroes. and-
Ouroboros, I guess, would be the next one.
Yes, Ouroboros. So we already talked here and there about it. Basically, two characters can fusion during battle, and they become this new Evangelion form. Those big, I don't know if they are robots, because they seem kind of to be a natural form, and it is just awesome. It is just anime awesomeness, and I think it can.
It is.
It can make the combat because a lot of the time with stuff like that, to the combat you'll be like, okay, so I'm simply stronger. But I think in this specific case it is really cool because you get two specific characters, you have a time to work with it, and they not only affect battle, but they also can work in the chain attack. So they are pretty integrated in the whole battle system.
Yeah, they're pretty important.
The system remind me a lot of the final character that you unlock on chapter 7 of Xenoblade 2.
Yes.
I don't know, the ascendant form of this character. So the way that they work reminds me of that a lot, because you have this specific time and you get super strong.
Yeah.
I love that they have their own skill tree. I think that's awesome.
Oh, I'm
It's
super
really
happy
cool.
with that. It looks
Yeah.
like there's so much customization you're going to be able to do.
Yeah, it looks
because of-
super clean.
It's such a huge skill tree. I think it's
Yeah.
called a soul tree in game, and it's there are so many options. There's even like, if you look at the path, there's one option near the middle that can only be accessed by going around this like super long path through the
All
outside.
the connections,
Yeah,
right?
and it also has like this unique symbol where I think it's like it's a white or gray sword and like this kind of star symbol. So there's going to be specific. It seems like there's going to be specific rewards for getting to certain paths and whatnot that have like different skill branches, where a skill branch will focus maybe on like a different characteristic. But man, that's just really cool. It's going to add, like, on top of all the customization we have from the class and hero system, this is just another layer of customization where Ouroboros are a huge part of the combat, and now you're going to be able to change so much about them based on what you want them to focus on.
True. Yeah, I mean, it's something that I think we'll probably get to very early in the game. I mean, we already saw one of the... I don't know if all the characters will get to fusion at the same time. Maybe it is something gradual. First Noah and Mio, and then the others. But I think it's something that will be always in the game, and we'll be always upgrading and working with it. And it just looks awesome. The alternate forms, we had a look at them. I think I prefer those, the white ones with the girls controlling.
Yeah.
I think they look awesome. The one with Mio and Noah in particular looks very, very nice.
They all look really cool. I think I like the Senna form the most. I love how the tail has this flame aesthetic to reflect like her hair. And I love the two giant wings that she can turn into a hammer. It's just a really cool design element. I love how the forms in general are like these very robotic forms that also kind of refer to past Xeno elements, Or like, for instance, Mio's Ouroboros looks a little bit like Cosmos. Senna's looks like a specific gear from Xenogears called
Yeah,
Cressus.
it has that vibe. Yeah.
And it has like those kind of references, but at the same time, they feel very true to the character itself. So like Mio having these sort of cat ears and having all these rings on her body, Senna's form being like kind of small, but being able to have the hammer and the flames, like I mentioned. It's all some really cool integration of these different design elements into these different forms.
Yeah, I wonder because when we first saw the Ouroboros, the one design that looks kind of weird was the one with Taion and Uni because it looked more like a woman than
Yes.
a man. And I wonder if that is the one with Uni controlling or
Yes,
not.
it would be. Yeah. Because
Okay,
all
makes sense,
the first ones that we saw were the ones with the Kevis characters controlling it.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, these
that
are the
makes
ones
sense.
with
I was relating to their genders and not to their teens. Now it makes more sense. Yeah.
It's also interesting that I saw someone online point this out. All the Kevis Ouroboros forms have a single core. I think Noah's and Lance's are in their chest, and Uni is a little bit lower at her waist. But all of the Agnes Ouroboros forms have 2 cores, which is a little interesting. Like looking at it, I think Mio's has 1 in each leg. I think Senna's does as well, and Tyon's form has 1 in each arm.
I wonder if that has a deeper meaning in the lore, right?
Yeah, I was thinking that as well.
Descendants of Kevis and Agnes, from where they came from? If they are, like, I don't think they are all from the same. They are all humans from the same species. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
It is interesting to see how they will develop that.
Yeah. I do wonder if it's just something as basic as like the Kevis ones have 1 core because they're from Xenoblade 1, and the Agnes ones have 2 cores because they're from Xenoblade 2. But
Xenoblade 2, yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of things are really mixed here together, so it's kind of difficult to point out. But yeah, I think we talk a lot of stuff of the direct, a lot of the mechanics. The direct was basically that. At the end, we have a little more story tidbits, showing a little bit more stuff, but everything really super fast cuts and a lot of stuff happening at the same time. So we just know that a lot of things will happen and the game will. I can only imagine the climax that Takahashi made for this game, because it would probably be awesome.
Yeah.
Is there, before we talk about the expansion pass, is there anything that you want to add about the game in general? Something that didn't fit our conversation?
I guess since we were talking, I mentioned briefly about having more Xenoblade X elements. Something that I saw also point out online is that the consoles have sort of a similar design to the Black Knight from Xenoblade X. So, you didn't play through the entirety of X, right?
I played it, but I didn't make all the side quests.
Okay, but you beat the main story?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember. I don't think I remember the Black Knight. Oh!
Yeah, he's the character that appears at the very end with, like, no context. We have no idea who he is. He just shows up with this other character on the shore. And you look at his model, and he also has this sort of purple core in his chest that looks like what the consoles have, which is a little... It's kind of interesting. I wonder if that's just, again, Takahashi reusing design elements, or if there's actually something deeper to that.
Yeah, I mean, it's always unexpected to see something from Xenoblade Chronicles X, but who knows? Yeah. It is different because it is difficult to say, because even if the Black Knight doesn't appear a lot on Xenoblade Chronicles X.
No,
so we don't
that
have a
one
full
scene,
look
yeah.
on him. Yeah. It's funny because you guys who are listening can't see, but Nicholas made an amazing presentation with some images, and I have a picture with Black Knight, which is basically a print screen from Blender that someone had the model. So we can see a little bit, and it really looks similar to the one that we saw on the trailer.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe. I know there's been theories that there's like a certain ring in the background of one of the areas that might be the ring from Oblivia in X. I don't know if that's accurate,
talking
but
about that.
Yeah,
honestly, I think it's just a little bit similar.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'll have to see eventually. Xenoblade 2 definitely had some connections to 1 that we we're not expecting.
Exactly.
So it would be
exactly.
interesting if 3 does the same thing but with X.
I think the biggest problem with Xenoblade Chronicles X is that it has kind of a different lore for planet Earth
Yes.
than the other Xenoblades say about it. So I that's always the reason why I'm always, how can they actually manage to? Unless it's something, I mean, they can always resort to a multiverse or something like that. But at least for the moment, I don't know how they can actually make sense of this.
Mhm.
By the end of the presentation, they show us the expansion pass.
Mhm.
And it is funny because as a fan, I was super hyped to see that. I was
Yes.
expecting to see that. And I forgot that expansion pass is not viewed as something really good by gamers. With good reason, because a lot of the time companies will announce expansion pass without without saying a lot about sometimes it seems like they did not put content in the game.
Yeah.
But
That they just
for
cut
us,
content from the main game so that they can sell it to you at an extra price.
But what is happening here, we saw the exact same thing with Xenoblade 2. It was announced in the Xenoblade 2 Direct. It has almost the same stuff announced. And by the end of it, I don't think anyone who paid for the expansion pass was actually disappointed because I saw even some people saying that Torna was better than the base game. So,
Yes.
you know.
That is partly my opinion, although not necessarily from a gameplay
Yeah.
standpoint. But it's, yeah.
I mean, I understand why people say that, but I can't compare it because it's like an expansion.
Yeah, it's a
full
very
game,
different
so,
experience.
yeah.
But the point remains that
But-
it is a fantastic DLC. Like, for $30, it is honestly a steal. Assuming that
Probably
we
my
get...
favorite DLC. Yeah.
Yeah. Assuming that we get something similar to Torna of the Golden Country, which, I mean, they've said as much, this is definitely going to be worth the price.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, people, the thing with expansion pass is always how much do you actually trust the developer and how much you care for that. It's like Breath of the Wild had the announcement of expansion pass before launch. No one was complaining. I think some people tried to complain, but as soon as the review started to come out and it was clear that the base game was fantastic, people noticed that the expansion pass were merely what I like about it is like a confirmation that eventually we'll get the new story. I was expecting to see that, and the dates that they put, I think it was December. I mean, they won't launch on that date. It's a hold up. They won't launch a game in the last day of next year. It's kind of weird, but I think it will be around that timeline, and
It's,
so.
I think the dates themselves are also a really good way of showing that, hey, this is not them cutting content, right? Like,
It's a plan.
exactly. Like
yeah.
the first set of the expansion pass that we're getting is happening by the end of this year. Like in another 5 months after the game launches.
And here's the thing, you don't have to buy it as soon as the game launch. I think I will only buy by the end of this year when the stuff of new side quests and new heroes actually comes out. So I actually like how they come clean because, for example, Nintendo has this new way with the sports games like Switch Sports, like Mario Strikers, of free updates. And my biggest issue with that is that we don't know when and what will come. We don't know when will be the last updates, if it will be more. And usually they just try to tease just a little bit. So it's weird. For example, Mario Strikers just came out. A lot of people are complaining because there's character missing. And we don't even know when new characters will actually come out.
Yeah, as an example,
if
Mario...
they did something like that, I would love.
Yeah. As an example, Mario Tennis got supported for a super long time, like several months. But Mario Golf only got supported for like only a couple. So, it like you said, it's just really nice having this all laid out. We know what to expect. We know roughly when to expect it by. We also know that this is not a situation where they're trying to like, hey, let's drip feed content. Like, no, this is stuff that if the expansion pass did not exist, this probably would never be added into the game because it's just added development cost at a time that they could probably not warrant with the budget that they have.
Exactly. This shows a big level of confidence in the game that they have, because they are already developing more stuff in that world. And I think we should mention the elephant in the room, which is the art of the expansion pass. It has the three swords, Shulk's swords, the Rex version, if I'm not mistaken, from Future Connected, Noah's sword, and Pyra's sword, all the red swords from the games. And we don't know exactly, but there's a lot of speculation. The Xenoblades,
we had talked about this a little bit before, just between ourselves, but the expansion pass for Xenoblade 2, when it was announced, even before we knew that it was based on Torna, the logo representing it was the Tornan emblem with Oresco in the background. The image they're choosing to represent the expansion pass is important. It's not just a random thing. So the fact that they are specifically choosing to feature all three of the main characters' swords, and even that they're choosing to feature Shulk's Monado Rex, not the more iconic regular Monado, could mean a lot. It could mean that the story scenario is going to have some really wacky stuff in it. And I think even the website calls attention to it. They had a little summary of everything announced in the Direct. It was in Japanese, but you translate the Japanese, and there's a line that specifically says, what could possibly be the significance of the three swords being there? I don't know.
I think because there's this, maybe it's just, Rex and Shulk will appear as heroes. And I mean, that's still possible.
Yes.
But I think it is related to the new story, because I was thinking it would be a really clever way to put those characters in, because let's say that Xenoblade 3 by the end of the game manages to explain why the game connects, and we know that Rex and Shulk are still alive somewhere or something like that, and you can't bring those characters out of nowhere to the end of the game like Rex and Shulk, because they have such a big significance. I think they would probably diminish the protagonists of Xenoblade 3, This still is a story about Noah and his friends and all of that. Yeah,
it's why you don't want to have too many returning characters from the first two games. Yeah,
exactly. So I think it would be kind of not a good move to actually bring those characters to the main game. But if they are focusing on an expansion, it's a really clever way to do that.
That's a really good point.
Yeah. And I wonder if the challenge modes from Xenoblade 2 will be considered canon or non-canon.
I cannot wait for the Nop on stage to just randomly show up. Hey, what's going on?
That will be fun.
Yeah,
but I think it's probably really... Some people were talking about, it's Shulk, Rex returning, but then I listened to someone say, maybe it's not Rex, it's just Pyra, because it's just her sword, and I was wondering, maybe it is, because Rex technically is immortal. Yeah,
technically he doesn't have a direct relation to it, especially at the end of I guess at the end of Xenoblade 3 he is the driver, but still technically Pyra's sword. I mean, Smash has Pyra appear with her sword as a playable character without that, and obviously Smash is not canon, but still it's an example of technically that sword is more associated with Pyra than Rex.
And even though I love Rex, I think he's a great protagonist, I think a lot of fans would be more happy to see just Pyra than Rex and Pyra return.
Although I will say, I would actually like to see Rex's design in a Xenoblade 3 style.
Oh, yeah.
That could be pretty interesting.
Maybe he has a different outfit, right? He doesn't need to use that.
I mean, let's be honest.
So far, we did not saw salvaging in this world.
Yes, maybe. No fishing minigame. I mean, if we do have different outfits for characters that return, I would also be happy if Pyra and or Mithra got different outfits. Honestly, just being able to see them in new outfits that are maybe more, I guess that match Xenoblade 3's world a bit more, could be really neat.
Yeah.
Honestly, that applies to any of the returning characters. It's just fun to see what kind of new designs they could come up with.
This game, man, so many expectations.
Yeah, it is worth pointing out though that we are getting. They are confirming 2 new hero characters through the expansion pass.
Yes.
So that would make sense for it to be Shulk and Rex to some degree. But if they're being featured in the main story, their main story expansion, that probably won't be the case. It would mean that we get
Yeah, that
them
would
as
make things a
chibis,
little
though.
confusing.
We do get them as like chibi icons though, which would be really nice.
Yeah, maybe
yeah.
after the expansion you could unlock them in the base game.
Who knows?
something
It could
like
be.
that.
It depends because for Xenoblade 2, right? Like the DLC was basically random characters or random blades, right? Because I think the DLC
Right.
was what? It was Poppy Buster, Corvin, and Crossette. So these were not
Yes.
like returning characters or any way. Although
They're just super
yeah.
stronger blades.
Shulk, Fiora, and Elma were, I think, technically part of the Land of Challenge.
Yeah.
And then the Torna blades were part of New Game Plus, and they were not tied to the DLC in any way. But so this could either be like completely new heroes out of nowhere, or it could possibly be returning characters in some way. If we're getting them, I'm wondering like if these are going to be, important characters either to the Xenoblade 3 story or from past games, what like 2 characters they could be. The first ones that come to mind to me are it being Melia and Nia.
Yeah, because they're already involved.
Yeah. They would be technically returning characters and also important characters in this game, because I don't think they're going to be heroes in the base game.
No, I don't think so. Yeah.
So that would be an interesting way of like kind of integrating them in a way that's also probably non-canon because it's part of the DLC.
I was afraid that in this direct they would actually show Melia or Nia taking off the mask, but they did not show. They show very little of both of them.
Yeah, that was one thing that I thought was kind of interesting is that in general the trailers and this direct as well, I feel like they show Melia more than Nia. Like I don't think Nia had a voice line in this direct. It was
just
Melia.
one take, I think.
So I wonder if maybe the way that the story is structured is you're going to be heading to Alchemoth first and like trying to figure out what's going on with the consoles there, and so you're going to end up meeting Melia first, and Nia's going to be saved for later on in the game, which is why most of what we've seen has been Melia, because it's a little bit earlier on.
Yeah, because I think that Mio has to be related to Nia somehow. I don't know exactly, but I think that will probably be one of the plot points.
I wonder if that's tied to the whole cloning concept anyway.
Yeah, good points. And maybe she's related and doesn't even know, or something like that.
I mean, the other thing is that I don't think she exactly matches Nia's design, right? Like, aren't the eyes a different color?
They are, but the thing that gets me is the core crystal.
Yes, that's why it's very close.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think most people were theorizing that she was a daughter of Rex and Nia because she looks so much like Nia, but she has the same color eyes as Rex. I don't think that's necessarily the case, but it's definitely too strong of a connection for it to just be nothing. I think
True.
I'd have to double check, but in the scenes where they're forming an Ouroboros and they're seeing each other's memories, I think there's a thing in the background of Mio's where you see Nia in it, like still with the mask and everything, but like just something establishing that they have met in the past in some way. I don't know.
They have a connection, right? Yeah.
There's also a thing where we saw in the this might be super major, but in the special edition for the game, like the promotional picture that they have the art book open, and it's open to a page that shows concept art for Mio, and one of them is for a young Mio. So there's going to be some kind of flashback involving Mio, most likely.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. We saw that there was some scenes with the Kiwi soldiers when there's kids and all of that. So probably really, I think the game will start with the Kiwi side. You probably start controlling Noah, and then eventually you meet the other side from Agnes.
Yeah,
I think
that would make sense.
And yeah, probably that will be the structure with the Kiwi side first and the Agnes.
Yeah, it gives you a little bit of an easier way the player into it by only having three characters to control before adding another 3.
Yeah, probably just to learn all the mechanics and all that stuff. I think that's it. We managed to talk about almost everything that we saw in the direct, and there was a lot that they show us. At this moment, I just want to play the game already.
Yes, it's another month.
Yeah, another month. I mean, it could be September, which would be worse, but now that it is so close, it feels like it's taking so long. Yeah, but eventually we'll all be playing it.
Yes, maybe
I'll
we.
already make my pre-orders soon.
Yes.
So, not the special edition because no one can get that, but the digital one.
Yeah.
Do you plan to get the expansion pass on day one, or you wait for later?
I'm not sure. I don't think it will be a huge deal if I wait for it because the stuff for
Yeah.
the expansion pass is just was it items and color variants for outfits. So it's not
Yes, I
huge,
think
but
so.
I might just pick it up if I have the spare cash because I mean why not at that point.
Yeah, I'll get eventually.
Yeah.
Probably when the first meaningful wave appears and I see all the characters and all that stuff, I'll probably get it.
Yeah, we're getting new outfits too, which is exciting. That lines up with the whole fashion gear
Yeah.
from earlier.
Exactly. But I hope the base game already has a tons of outfits to change. I would hope
Yeah.
so. Aside from the classes, of course. So that's basically it. Well, thank you so much if you listen to this discussion. You are a super Xenoblade fan because so far I think it's almost 2 hours of conversation, but trust me, we wanted to talk a lot about this because it's always fun to discuss, and I think if you are a big fan of the franchise, it's always fun to listen also. So yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for listening to this video. If you like this content, if you want more Xeno content, remember to leave a like and to subscribe to the Nintendo Everything channel. I'm posting videos here almost every week, and when Xenoblade comes, I'll already say that right here. After me and Nicholas beat Xenoblade 3, we will return here for a super discussion about the game. And we will see if our theories are correct, if you're wrong. And then I think we'll be like here 4 hours speaking about the game. No, I'm joking, but I think we'll have a lot to talk about, all the plot twists and all the stuff that we say. So stay tuned in for that in the future. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, bye!